Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the message in a Kobold event in which the Kobold Emissary is added to the game. So if you thought last week had a lot of events, wait till this week. Of course, it's not as much. We did have the 8-year anniversary last week, and some of those events are still going on, and this week definitely still has a lot going on. Maybe not as much as last week, but still a lot. The most noteworthy one, of course, being that we have a brand new campaign pass going on that brought in a new dragon gem that basically explodes everything below it, as well as, of course, everything else that comes with a pass like that. So let's start from the top and then go around to everything and start with the Glory Troop. And one thing we did get last week, it was actually on Monday. It was a very small patch, a version 6.6.1 patch, so small they didn't even post patch notes for it. However, one thing that fixed is, hey, you may notice it's right in the morning, right at reset time, and the shop is actually working. So that was one of the few things that it fixed. I'm not sure everything that it did because it didn't actually do a patch notes thing as far as a publicly posted one. However, it did fix this, so that's nice. So the other shop menu also ends up working now immediately. Anyways, so as far as Kobold Emissary, he is the first troop that comes in with this new mechanic. So for this entire season, for the next 10 weeks, we will have dragon gems fall into the board for all 6 of the corresponding colors. And this one specifically does it for blue. It creates 5 blue dragon gems and then either does an extra turn or creates additional 3 for 8 total blue dragon gems. The way that dragon gems work is they will explode everything below them. So you'll end up getting them for their standard amount of mana, and then everything below will be 50% mana accumulation based on the explode. So overall, it's an okay gem. Not too strong, not too weak. It really depends what mechanics we have with it will really determine how good or bad it is. For example, this troop is okay with it. It's not the best thing to be using it. If it had auto extra turn every single time, then this would be a different story. Unfortunately, despite it being a goblin, it only extra turns 50% of the time. While an 8 gem spawn is decently likely to land an extra turn, obviously that is not as likely as a 100% chance. So that's a little bit unfortunate there. If nothing else, it does have a 50% mana start naturally, so has that going for it. If nothing else, it's a good test troop to just kind of mess around with the new mechanic. But overall, it's probably not something that's going to really be utilized a lot into the future to use the mechanic, as hopefully we'll get better options for different colors, or even, who knows, maybe even random colored dragon spawns, and then you can actually end up getting some little bit better value there. But overall, as it currently stands, it's a kind of nice introduction, but likely will not be used much into the future after you mess around with the new mechanic, just to kind of try it out. Anyways, as far as the event key drop table is concerned, of course, we got ourselves a Kazale event week. So everything that is in drop table, if we go over to troops and go under Kazale and show all, we can end up seeing everything here. So everything you see underneath this tab, except for 5 things, are in the event key drop table. Those 5 things include the standard for faction troops, for this case the Emperorinas are, and the one other troop is Darksmith Drenza. This is basically the final reward, or kind of final reward, not exactly final, but depending on how you do it, it could be the final. But the final reward that you get for maxing out Soulforge, you can end up crafting this guy. Overall, not too hard to get compared to some of the other completionist related mythics. However, you might not have it yet because it's a pretty bad one to really have. Curse gems don't really do too much. They count as brown and just curse all enemies. There's much better ways to be able to apply curse, plus it can still backfire and curse your entire team, which would be very, very exceedingly bad. I'm making curse gem and overall not really that needed of a mechanic due to how many ways there already are to really efficiently apply curse, particularly Mirage Queen when synergized with elementals. So not really much of a need to end up using Darksmith. So, yeah, those are the 5 that are not drop table. As far as things that are in drop table that are worth potentially getting, I would say this week is mostly a skip week for event keys unless you're looking to get Kazale upgraded, though there is one exception to that, if you need a Gorgotha or High King Iron Gut. These are both decent legends that aren't used a huge amount, but can be useful. Gorgotha is just a general tank, one of the more, as far as how long it's been running as a decent tank, pretty much through the entirety of time, since version 2.0. When it ends up getting 75% score reduction. So this is a really good high score reduction troop that has mana accumulation. It is actually pretty much the highest score reduction troop that is not completely useless, as many of the things that have slightly higher, like Stonehammer, just aren't usable. So it's really good if you're just looking for something really bulky that can accumulate a bunch of mana. King Highforge, while super situational, has one main purpose, and it is to be used with a 4x Dwarf team, particularly a 4x Dwarf team that ends up using Rune Priest hero class, and that Rune Priest hero class is a barrier on brown hero class that has Dispel on extra turn, which is the main gimmick and main reason why you'd ever bring it out. It is super ultra situational, but there are a couple of situations where it is more efficient to run this with a Rune Priest rather than running it with a different hero class, so Super situational, but could be okay. The other mythics, pretty bad. And the only other things you'd really get for utility here is this thing for Empower into Brown, used on some Guild War days occasionally, as well as if you just want to feed a bunch of Brown. Apothecary, but it's already such a low rarity that you probably can already get it, as well as Deep Bore and Dwarven Gate, though there are such low rarities that you're probably going to be able to get them naturally. So for the most part, pretty skippable unless you're looking for these 2 legends, or if you're looking just to upgrade the kingdom in general. But do keep in mind the 4 faction troops and Darksmith Drenza are not in the drop table. However, everything else that you see there is. Next on things to go over, let's go over the current world event, now that we have those once again. Of course, last week we ended up having Tower of Doom, but we are back to the standard world lore events now that we are back in a new campaign. And of course, with that new campaign, actually, you know what, let me go over to Dragon Gems first. So with this new campaign, we have access to a new gem, those Dragon Gems. So we already saw this on the troop earlier. So let's just go show this mechanic real quick off the Kobold. So as far as this gem, it's pretty mid-tier, not the strongest power gem, far from the weakest. We mostly just want to get a little bit of our mana here. You're green to brown, so we don't want to actually cast that yet, and we will go for you now. So unfortunately, we do go for a bit of a miss. It does not have that auto extra turn, which is really unfortunate for a goblin. Do we end up getting it this time? Good. We did get the auto extra turn this time. We do have alignment this time as well, so we can just go for all of our mana and go throw down our poke. And as you can see, it's basically just exploding everything below it, while still getting the 1 mana for your actual gem, in this case blue, since it is a blue gem. Overall, it's not doing too much. Obviously, if they spawn closer to the bottom, that is quite detrimental. This might actually be one of a few mechanics in the entire game where shuffling might actually be a good thing for it. And one thing that you can actually do, which this team isn't, since I'm mostly just doing it for showing the mechanic, but Mistralis. Mistralis shuffles the board with an auto extra turn while using blue. So you can kind of synergize it that way. That would also be relevant if there's a good yellow or brown spawner of these gems into the future, particularly brown, since you can also do hero barriering on brown while having Mistralis, while having that troop, while having one other option. So it could end up potentially forming a decent team, as it is a rare situation where shuffle in order to get dragon gems that are towards the bottom, towards the top, so that they can explode everything below them to get slightly more value. Overall, it's an okay gem. Nothing too strong, nothing too weak. But just a little fun mechanic that we'll have over the next 10 weeks, and hopefully we'll get a few good troops that can actually utilize it to a slightly better degree than that troop does, as it's pretty average on that one. But it does have potential if it's combined with a bunch of other mechanics, like an AoE hit into some other things, more consistency with creating them, or auto extra turn, and stuff like that. Anyways, now let's go over the world event. So, as far as world events, the scoring for this is a little bit weird. The main way I'm doing it this week is, first things first, circle is highest priority. If you see a circle, take a circle. They will give you eyeballs. Those will give you the highest amount of points. The problem with a lot of the other rooms is they are all marked as legendary caves. The way to know which ones are the least valuable is, do they have 2 words? If it is a 2-word room, it is the worst room. So these include Silent Sentinel and Hive Mind. Do not take Silent Sentinel or Hive Mind unless you are forced to do so. These are the absolute lowest priority. The next tier of them upwards is the ones that are these caves that are not 2-word words. In this case, this is the Frostfire King, as you can see right here, as well as the Obsidiaxis. Those 2 are the mid-tier ones, and the circles are the highest priority. So always take circle. Second priority is anything that isn't a 2-word word, and then the lowest priority are all the 2-word words. Basically, easiest way to remember it, all circles are good, and any 2-word ones, so Silent Sentinel and Hive Mind, never take. And as long as you do that, always take all the circles and avoid taking these 2, you will be fine, because it will naturally just be taking the rest of them, and you don't have to bother remembering the other 2 in that situation. So take circle, don't take the 2-word ones, and you're good to go. As far as the actual mode, we are restricted to generators and strikers. So we do have access to truffle spam, which is nice. So you can just empower into truffle. Unfortunately, no Mirage Queen, but it's pretty much the full team, so you're kind of good to go. Could replace our hero there too if you so choose. As far as other things that are good, let's go kind of do a quick rundown real quick, as I don't always go over everything here, but worth doing so. Piskia is pretty nice, bunch of Devourers. Sakarax you could actually put into a team like this and go super loop crazy. Obviously, you can go Beatrix instead of Truffles and use one of them into a team if you find stats effects to be annoying, though I don't think we have to deal with too many stats effects for this event. Let's see. Bonnie Rose is funny, though I don't think is that viable for this particular. Forest Troll is pretty good as good. Well, I'm using here too, but it has high score reduction while also having Entangle on Skull, so that's nice. A lot of good empowers to end up utilizing, so you have that. What else do we have for damage here? We have, once again, more powers. That one would cleanse. Not too much for damage, oddly enough. Not as much as you would hope. We have that little Toad Squeezer extra turn, Apothecary for cleanse into brown. But all this is like mana, not really good damage. This guy's good in arena, but not good for this event. This guy could be with explode while still doing some damage. You can kind of get a gold synergy, as there are a couple strikers that have like gold synergy here that you can kind of do if you really wanted to. That would actually make a good low rarity team. Going like an all gold synergy there. And wow, we do not... Gosh, you're basically just going to have to go Truffle or Beatrix. We do not have that too many good damagers. Unless you're going like down the Mythic route with like Piskia or something. Because Aquaticus isn't too good. Flame Anu isn't good. Shade of Zorn isn't good. Gosh, the only Mythic that does any damage like Piskia. Yeah, you kind of just got to go Truffle or Beatrix. Wow, that's a weird event. I didn't even realize we were that limited on damage. I was just building this Truffle team and I was like, oh, okay. Because I saw Truffle, I was like, yeah, we got to build Truffle. And apparently that's one of the only teams that we even have. So yeah, go Truffle with like Empower into Forest Troll. You'll be fine. And of course, Truffles, even though it's a legend, it's a really easy to obtain legend. You just throw some Chaos Shards and Amethyrax in the Underworld, and you're good to go. You'll get them pretty quick. And it's not like normal legends that are a lot harder to get. Underworld legends are always targetable, so much easier. Anyways, let's go over all the other events that we have going on this week. So this Tuesday, we have a faction event for Emperinazar, which is a brown-yellow restriction. All the standard loot is per normal. On Wednesday, we're going to be getting a new pet for Kazel. I believe it's just Kazel bonus, if I'm not mistaken. Thursday, we have Rune Priest class events, used primarily as a barrier on brown Dispel hero class. Super situational, but there are some teams that you do end up incorporating it for. It's very rare, but it is usable, if nothing else. And on this Friday, we're going to be having a faction event. We'll be having a deep delve for... Actually, that's a good question. What is getting a deep delve? Hold up. Actually, don't remember. Well, let's go check real quick. So, the one that's getting a deep delve, if we go over to the good old terransworld.com, we can check very quickly. The one that is getting a deep delve is actually one. I'll do one better. We'll show the troop. Let's see. So, the one that is getting a deep delve is Primal Rift. Okay. And as far as what the troop does, we just grab this. Copy, copy, copy. Boom, boom, boom. Put it right over here. Boom, boom, boom. Put it right in there. Paste, paste, paste. Okay. So, Dark Forest Troll. Oh, yeah, I remember what this guy does. He's useless. He's an elemental giant. He's a yellow-blue. 12 mana cost. He creates a mix of green and brown. That's it. He's basically just weaker Forest Troll. He even has bark skin, but doesn't even have the entangle thing. But yeah, he's basically just weaker Forest Troll. Any of these that do this double-double isn't really that good. All the trolls that do a single one are way better. And he's just weaker version of Forest Troll. It's basically as simple as that. So, unfortunately, nothing too relevant there. But if nothing else, Primal Rift is getting another troop. And also getting a deep delve this Friday. And I've actually been skipping those lately. It saves you 710 gems, which you can spend towards Dragonite or other things, and then just get them with Chaos Shards at a later point. So no need to necessarily go for them, as they'll be in the drop table 4 to 6 weeks later, and you can just Chaos Shard target them. So let's go over now to the Soulforge. So as far as Soulforge is concerned, a couple good things to get. Most notably would be two things. Voice of Orpheus and Lord of Slaughter. So Lord of Slaughter I'd probably say is my favorite of the two here. Ends up creating a bunch of brown and then converts all brown into Doom Skulls. And on top of that, that alone would already be worthwhile for its 27 mana cost. But on top of that, also gets inflict 2 bleeds, or 1 to 2 bleeds onto the enemy team, and 1 to 2 death marks on the opposing team. This generally doesn't do anything, however, when it does, it's very beneficial, particularly those death marks. On top of that, it is also the only troop in the entire game that has a 100% chance to ignore skulls. So basically, or sorry, to ignore armor. So basically, any skulls he takes goes directly to their HP value rather than to their armor value, 100% of the time, assuming he's not stunned. And it also gets to summon a Doomstorm, which synergizes with its Doom Skulls. So, and it even has some skull reduction, so you can use it in the first slot, even though it's more often used as a second slot option, as it does die a little bit too quick, especially if it misses. It'll basically just insta-die. However, it's a pretty decent troop, really good skull spammer. Can be used for Explore 12 quick kills if you're looking for some variation. You don't want to go with Zul'Goth team. So it's pretty good. Very situational when it's used, but still a very, very, very strong skull spammer in the higher tier, definitely an S tier. As far as skull spam or even just troops in general are concerned. So pretty high priority. However, if you have a Zul'Goth, you don't necessarily really need him. Zul'Goth already will do his role in a similar way in most situations. The other one is Voice of Orpheus. So Voice of Orpheus is actually a bit more unique. While I don't feel like it's used nearly as much as the other troop, it is used in a way that is unique to any troop. Back in the day, there used to be a bunch of things that had Impervious while also having Cleanse. In the current state of the game, unless I am forgetting one, there is no troop other than Voice of Orpheus that has Impervious, Cleanse on trait, and Cleanse on ability. It has basically 2 cleanses, both on traits and on ability, while having Impervious. It is unique in this regard, and it is the only one that can do this to this degree. This is particularly noteworthy for one really specific thing these days. Well, technically 2. One is Guild War. It's always kind of been used for Guild War as an alternative counter if you really need it on yellow, purple, or red day, since a single yellow can just cleanse out your entire team, and you don't have to worry about elemental as much, because if it ends up getting hit, well, you don't have to worry about it. And then if you just take a yellow, boom, you're good to go. But the other purpose that it's actually got pretty recently is for dungeons, daily dungeons, oddly enough. So particularly Yellow Day daily dungeons, though there's a few others that could be annoying, but particularly Yellow Day. One of the trap rooms that you can find is Silence, and Silence is exceedingly annoying because you cannot end up getting your ability off. Which means you would have to do it specifically through trait. And then there's some other times where you're going to get stunned, like on Brown Day, where you get stunned on trait, so you can't use like a Beatrix and take an extra turn. So this is just a nice, diverse way to make sure that regardless of if you're getting silenced on a Yellow Day or stunned on a Brown Day or some other effect I'm forgetting of that might really cripple your team, like maybe Death Mark on Purple or something similar, it basically makes sure that you just take a single yellow or single cast and you don't have to worry about it. And it itself has Impervious, so you don't have to worry about silence, you don't have to worry about stun, you don't have to worry about it dying to Death Mark. And it's basically just a really consistent way to invest one of your slots for the dungeon battles in order to just do them slightly more efficiently. Is this really worth it for 3 battles per day where you might only have to, like a few times per week where it's really relevant? Probably not. However, if you're at the point late enough where you're just looking for a utility troop to kind of help with various things, this is something that can help with your daily dungeons. So it does have some value. And of course, it's used occasionally for Guild War, though it's super situational when you actually end up bringing it out. As far as weapons, they're all pretty skippable. Unless you're looking for like that double gem spawning one, this doesn't really do much. It's only for Kazale. War and Peace is an okay weapon, but if I'm not mistaken, you still get it for free just for completing out the Kazale questline, so you don't really have to go and spend resources for it. So overall, it's a pretty skippable week for weapons unless you're just looking to upgrade the Kazale Kingdom or just completion this out every single weapon for the kingdom. Aside from that, let's go over very briefly the campaign pass. So of course we mentioned this, we do have a new campaign. We do have those dragon gems falling from the sky that will explode everything below them. And let's go now over top of some of the rewards that we're getting here. Some of these I actually haven't seen. One of these is Zolgoth, or the Drollgoth, I should say. This is a pet that's been in the files for, gosh, 4 years now. And they just finally ended up adding it to the game. So this is basically just a mini Zolgoth as a pet. So if you're a fan of Zolgoth, you can end up getting him. As far as the weapon, let's see what this does. Create 2 blue, green, red, brown dragon gems, and gain an extra turn. Okay, this is really good. This is basically weaker Celestial Flask. Interesting. So Celestial Flask is the best weapon we have ever gotten from a campaign. And this might be the second best. We'll have to see. So how many of those crate into its own color? Yes, it creates blue. It does not create purple. Interesting. So it creates 2 blue, 2 green, 2 red, 2 brown. So one of those is its own color. One of them, or 3 of them is not, but it doesn't create its second color. Interesting. But it's auto extra turn. So the chance that you might be able to get alignment on this, get a bunch of explodes, and get half your value back, decently high. Also, I'm not sure what his other perks are, but assuming some of those other perks are decent as well. This has a lot of potential to be good. Probably weaker than Flask, but definitely in the upper range of weapons that we've gotten from stuff like this. Also, it's the earlier section, so we'll be able to get it as early as the 3rd week. So that's kind of nice. Sometimes they put it pretty deep, like over here or something similar. Aside from that, we basically have the Emperor, except it's the Empress. So the Emperor gives all stats to the first ally on your team, and this one gives it to your last ally. Which one is better really depends on your team composition. The benefit of doing it to your first slot is, of course, if you're using a skull-related team, this will give a better benefit since it's giving durability and skull damage to your first slot. However, this is probably going to be better if you're looking to buff up something for magic specifically, because this will give it specifically to your last ally, which you won't be able to use the attack values too much, but you'll be able to use the HP and armor on it to survive, but most notably, the magic. It'll be in a somewhat safe position, well, it depends what your enemy team is, but generally speaking, a somewhat safe position, while also being able to go get a ton of magic. So if you have this into a team that's already creating a lot of green that can get some kind of synergy with it, this might actually make its way into some viable teams, similar to how Emperor can ever so occasionally. And this one's going to be even better in some situations, given that it's going to be really good, even better at buffing magic, as you don't need to worry about your first slot dying, or in this case, your last slot dying, since it's generally a much safer location than your first slot. So interesting to see exactly how this will end up panning out. Also grants a random status, a good status effect to an ally whenever you end up casting a spell. So it has that going for it too. So I can almost think like maybe like a truffle, like a forest troll, Truffle him one other thing, kind of getting that kind of synergy and seeing if we can get enough magic to make it worthwhile compared to double Truffle, because this could be a replacement for double Truffle teams, since it having 50% mana start wouldn't really matter since its mana cost is already so low. So could be the new double Truffle replacement where we don't run double Truffle anymore, so that'll be interesting. So interesting how that pans out. And lastly here, we have the Elder Dragon. So this, of course, is the main thing that we're getting from the current campaign pass. It deals damage to all enemies, then creates 9 Cursed Gems, boosted by cursed enemies, only at a 1-to-1, which that can be okay if you get a 4x curse through its ability already or through other means. That will end up being, a 13 brown spawn, basically, as Cursed Gems count as a brown gem. And one thing that is good about this is, yes, it does indeed feed into itself. So you know what this actually reminds me a lot of? Which makes sense because it's actually a dragon as well. It reminds me a lot of the Dragon's Claw dragons that end up boost ratio offering a certain stats effect. One of them does it based on burning on the opposing team. One of them does it based on bless on your team. And this one does it based on curse, basically the inverse of bless, on the opposing team, while also creating the thing that can cause it themselves, which is actually kind of interesting. That it can end up getting all of it on its own. You get a single cursed gem and boom, you already got yourself back to a 13 ratio, assuming none of them have died yet. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Also, similarly, how one of them has an attack reduction every single time you take an extra turn. This one has a magic reduction every time you take an extra turn. This is actually what Draco 1337 should have had. Draco 1337 only does a magic reduction. It's a dragon that only does a magic reduction to 1 troop at a time. However, this does it to an entire team at a time, making it actually viable. Because with Draco 1337, I believe it's a 2 magic reduction per extra turn, which isn't really that viable. It just doesn't do it quick enough to really be able to get much value from it. However, being able to do 3 to all simultaneously, you take 10 extra turns, that's 30 magic. That might not sound like too much, but in PvP-like modes, that is a super high amount of magic to end up reducing. Especially with double of them. Obviously, we only get 1 from the campaign pass. By getting another one into the future, and having like double magic reduction to some kind of team that spams a lot of brown. Not to mention, I keep mentioning Truffle, but hey, it has Truffle synergy there. They can end up doing. Actually, one other weird synergy it has. It creates Madness Storm at start of battle. So Madness Storm, if I'm not mistaken, is blue-purple, as there's already something that creates Perpetual Madness Storm. But this is a new trait that just creates it for the first 4 turns, assuming it doesn't get countered by some other storm. But yeah, it's blue-purple storm for the first 4 turns, which is a little bit weird because it doesn't use blue necessarily itself. However, some of its synergy troops, like Truffle, luckily does use blue, so it has that going for it if nothing else. So the storm's probably not going to be as relevant compared to its magic reduction, but is another aspect on it nonetheless. But anyways, guys, I believe that's a full rundown on everything. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave in the comment section below. As per usual, we are going to be covering the Teams video in a little separate video, just so we can get this video out a little bit quicker. Teams video will hopefully be out in the next few hours if you're watching this as soon as it's going live. And if you're watching it later, it's probably already up. So we'll have a little card here that you can go click on to go see all the teams for the week. And we'll be showing them everything throughout the entire week, with the only exception being the weekend event, mostly because I do want to cover a video specifically on the new Deep Delve, as I do like covering each of the little Deep Delve ones, the new troop, as well as, just the new format and everything else with it, and a refresher on the team, since a lot of those videos we covered years upon years ago. Like that last one, I think we covered like maybe 3 years for Emperor Nazar, or not Emperor Nazar, I mean Primal Rift. Primal Rift was probably 4 years ago, right? Maybe 3, yeah. But it was a while ago, so we'll have an updated one on that this weekend, and we'll do that then, and have the Teams video up in a couple hours. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful week, and best of luck with everything. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.